So up to Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Yud Aleph, seemingly a very strange pasuk. Let's read it inside. Vayomer Aleihim Yisrael Avihem Im Kein Ephoi Zeis Asu Kichu Zimras Arts Bechlechem V'Hoyvidu Laish Mincha Ma'at Tzari U'Ma'at Devash Nechais Oloit Baknem Ushkin. So Yisrael, their father, springs into action and he says, if this is how it has to be, then here's what you got to do. And what do you have to do to solve this great trouble that we're in? Take some of the Zimras Aretz in your kelim and prepare this gift. And you think that the gift is sort of the least significant aspect. It's a very nice idea. If you're going back, bring him a gift. Mm-hmm. But it's the first thing he says. As if like, and here's what you got to do. Im kein eifai zeis asu, take a mincha. So somehow it seems like this mincha is very important. And you sort of could just ask in general, what do we need the mincha for in this story? Like, okay, they're going back, fine, they want to appease him, so you could say, on the way they brought a mincha with them, but Yaakov comes and says, bring a mincha, and here's what it has to be. And then the pasuk, let's trace what happens to this mincha. We'll see what we can glean. Then the pasuk says in pasuk Tesvav, Vayikru Anoshim es hamincha hazois. Okay, we're just going to focus on this today, on this mincha. So we have pasuk Yud Aleph through Yud Daled is Yaakov's instructions. Really, the first three psukim are instructions. He tells him in this pasuk we're focusing on take a mincha. And the next pasuk tells him what money to take, and then the third pasuk he tells him to take their brother as well, and then he davens for that. And then pasuk Tezvav describes they took es hamincha hazois, so that's the mincha as described, as prescribed by Yaakov. And then what happens to this mincha? So let's see. So jump ahead to pasuk Chaf Hei, and there the pasuk describes the presentation of the mincha. Vayachinu es hamincha. Ad boy Yosef batzaharayim kishamu kisham yoichul lechem. So the mincha once again gets a lot of attention, more than you would think, and the Torah describes the preparation of the mincha. Okay, so it's a presentation, it's a visual presentation, it has to look right, I guess. And it's a very interesting pasuk which says that they found out, they heard where they're going to eat, and therefore at noon, Tzaharayim. So they prepared the mincha in preparation of Yosef's arrival, and then the next pasuk describes his arrival. He came into the bayis, and they did this procession or this presentation. They brought in the mincha she'biyu. So these are the psukim which are Taka describing the mincha as being a very important event. They prepared it in advance, having heard where they're going to be eating bread. At noon, a lot of interesting details there. That there's notice drawn to the fact that they knew where they're going to eat, and that place is the bayis of Yosef, and indeed that's where they ate. Habaisa, and the place where they heard they're going to eat bread, and therefore they prepared the mincha for the afternoon. So it was Yosef came and they brought in the mincha she'biyu, and they bowed to him as well. And then things seem to go pretty smoothly from there. He's shayel l'shalom in pasuk Kaf Zayin, and Binyamin is neisechein. So you could read that as the mincha was effective, right? There was great presentation of the mincha, and it worked out. The timing and the time and place worked out, right? They knew when and where they're going to eat, and apparently the mincha is associated with where they're going to eat. It seems, or at least maybe it means where they're going to meet Yosef at the minimum. And it worked out, and he was very impressed. And he started talking nicely to them. In fact, Binyamin was nice. Okay, so let's focus on this aspect that the mincha goes to the place where they're going to eat bread. Okay, and also remember that the pasuk notes they could eat bread there in the afternoon at noon. It's all right. So let's think about what we do know about this mincha so far. Meaning, before we get to these psukim, but what do we know about this mincha from the past? So we know something very important about this mincha, which is that in as much as it parallels the same items that were on the caravan of camels, on the way down to Mitzrayim, the first time that was this delivery. And that's in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, where it says, Vayeshvu lecha lechem, Vayisu eineim vayiru b'hinei archas yishmelim ba'am migilad, u'maleim noisim nechais tzri v'loit. So the nechais tzri v'loit are there in that delivery to Egypt as well. Here, in addition to nechais tzri v'loit, there's also devash, butnim, and shkedim. Okay, but clearly there's some. We should read this. Probably we should read this mincha in light of that mincha, and or we should at least illuminate the idea of this mincha through that one. Significantly as well, then there the pasuk says Vayeshvu lecha lechem. Yosef is in the pit, which has no water, and they sit and eat bread. So he's starving and thirsting in the pit. They sit down to a meal without Yosef. And there's and now they bring a mincha, again go down to Mitzrayim with these special delicacies, whatever they are. But this time they're going to present it at a meal that they eat together with Yosef. Okay, so that's another clue. Okay, so now
incense and perfumes are not edible.
Yeah, but so what?
The vash, butnim, and shkedim are edible.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, wow. So that may be a clue. I have to think about that. So what's nechais? Do we know what that is? Is it a spice?
I think so. I don't remember what it was.
So Shalom is suggesting the nechais tzibulite are inedible and butnim, shkedim, and vash are edible. So Yaakov is perhaps. Okay, that's very interesting. That might work out with what. So in other words, the key difference between the first time and this time is the first time they experienced these items while they were eating without Yosef, and now they're going to eat it with Yosef. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, that might be the clue to understanding what the additions are. Very good. So I'll talk about what we do understand. I think we'll have to wait till next week till I'm going to think about that. That's pretty. You might be onto something here. And we'll see how it ties into what I'm going to suggest. Now I'm going to present you with something, and the sketch is ironclad. The specific understanding of it, I'm not 100% sure of. Okay, there might be different ways to go here. So let's first talk about what it meant in Parshas Vayeshev. This is something we spoke about in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, an amazing idea. What is the significance, this very dramatic pasuk in Parshas Vayeshev, where it says after they're threw Yosef in the pit and they're sitting down and they're eating bread. It's very dramatic. They picked up their eyes and they saw. And why is that so significant that they saw something, they picked up their eyes? Why is that interesting? So we explain that based on Amos Perek Ches. Amos Perek Ches, Amos talks about the people that sell the impoverished person for shoes, and that's the Shvatim selling Yosef, as we discussed. You see in the beginning of Amos. And the people that abuse the poor and hike up the price of grain. That's what Yosef did to Mitzrayim. And there it talks about Hashem not going to forget, which corresponds to Veish Gacheu, and the fact that the Nile River is going to flood. And there the pasuk talks about the kids are on and on, corresponding to the Yosef story. We don't have to review everything. What it says in the beginning of Perek Ches is that Amos received a visual test, as it were, of his prophetic abilities. And he was presented with a kluv kayetz. A kluv kayetz means a basket of summer fruits. And Hashem said, what do you see? And the answer was a basket of summer fruits. Basket of summer fruits, that tells you that that's the correct way to see it. It's a kluv kayetz, which means that the kates is nigh. And Hashem is no longer going to forgive Bnei Yisrael for, and almost picks up and says, for all the abusing the poor and selling the ani, the evian for shoes, etc., etc. So what the Shvatim were about to do to Yosef was what Amos is giving Musar about, and Amos understood that Hashem won't forgive this because he saw a basket of summer fruits, a kluv kayetz. Now the Shvatim also saw a bunch of summer fruits, but they didn't identify it as a kluv kayetz, as this Navi who was tested. See, the Navi was tested, Mataraya. And Mataraya suggests that you may or may not see it in the right light. I mean, you could look at the same thing and see it as a kluv kayetz, or you could look at it and say it's nechais tzri v'light, or maybe te'enim, or whatever. Similarly, we have in the beginning of Yirmiyah, Mataraya, and he says Matal Shaked. Of course, we have Shkedim here, and Hashem says, "Tavto lerois," because you did well. It's a test of the prophetic powers, whether he sees it correctly. So Amais sees this basket of summer fruit, and he understands that means Hashem is not going to forgive people who abuse the Evian or try to sell him. The Shvatim picked up their eyes and saw Nechais Tzivulai. In other words, here we're supposed to be this pasuk and think about what they didn't see. They didn't see it as a Kluv Kayetz. Had they seen it as a Kluv Kayetz, like a good Navi is supposed to see, then they would have understood Ba'akates, and Hashem is not going to forgive them. Instead, they failed at their ability to be Nevi'im, which is very significant, because why they failed at their ability to be Nevi'im? Because of what they're doing to Yosef. And that's described in Amos Periches Pasuk Tes as the sun setting in midday and the earth becoming dark. Now, why do I say that means that the Nevi'im, how do I know that means that the Nevi'im won't have the ability to have vision? Maybe it means some other calamity. Because you look at the parallel in Micha Paragimel, which is also about the brothers and the fact that they're going to sell Yosef. Okay, we're not going to review that. We'll get back to some of those psukim tonight. But in Micha Paragimel Pasuk Vav, it talks about the Nevi'im. Pasuk Hey and Vav talks about the Nevi'im that lead the people astray. And they only offer shalom to those people who feed them. Anyone who doesn't feed them, they declare war against them. And because of that, and that's a reference to the Shvatim, who couldn't speak shalom to Yosef, who was depriving them of food, by saying that they're going to be dependent on him for grain, and also by mixing teven with bar. Okay, so he's risking their food. He's endangering their food supply, I'd say. And the next pasuk here says, therefore, Laila lachem mechazayin, v'chashcha lachem l'ksayim. It's going to become dark, and the sun is going to set. The day is going to become dark. Kadar aleim hayayim, ubayshu hachayzim, because they're not going to be able to speak to Hashem. So what Amos talks about the sun setting in midday, Micha talks about the same thing. The day will become dark, and that's specifically that the Nevi'im are going to lose their nevuah. Why? Because of what the sins that Amos describes, Evin Bavur Na'alayim, which are also described in Micha. So that's why I'm telling you that Vevesi Hashem means they're losing the nevuah. Why am I bringing that point? We'll see in a minute. Okay, now going back to Amos. So that was what's happened in the nevuah of the non-nevuah, the failed nevuah. By Yisrael name, by you were supposed to read it as a failed nevuah. See, had they been on the Madrig of Nevi'im, they would have picked up the eyes and they would have struck them as a Kluv Kayetz, and they would have hit a message, a nevuah message of Ba'akates, and they would have said, what are we doing? What?
What case?
No, the kates of your sins. In Amos Periches, it's Ba'akates al Ami Yisrael, the kates that Hashem is no longer going to allow the Averis to pile up. It's a kates l'ra.
Because the punishment is coming.
Punishment is coming if you do this.
In that time, the punishment came, or you mean there was a famine?
What's a punishment that's around the corner? Interesting. I don't know.
If you mean the famine, that was 20 years. I mean, that was not 20 years. It was some years later.
Okay,
so
still
say it's coming.
No, it's an interesting question. There's also Vahim Miketz Shasayim Yom. By the way, that's the kates. The famine happened at a kates. Miketz Shasayim Yom.
A few years later.
Okay, but yeah, fine. I don't know if Ba'akates means.
It could be a few years.
Yeah, maybe it just means like this is going to be final. This is going to have a resolution. It's not just going to stay in the open. Yeah,
and
it could be 10 years.
And the sense in which they're suffering is that they no longer control over their own destiny. They have to go to Mitzrayim by
perhaps, yeah, and they suffered a lot going down to Mitzrayim, right? Because Yosef made them suffer. But yeah, so I'm not sure. It's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
What would it have looked like? I mean, what is it referring to? Right. What is it actually referring to? That okay.
Well, Mitzrayim is being judged, and Canaan has to go by from them.
Yeah, it's no fun.
They could be free of it or not.
Yeah, sure. No, it's definitely no fun. Another thing we have in okay, now let's look at Amos Perek Zayin from Pasuk Zayin. Amos Perek Zayin from Pasuk Zayin till the end of the Perek, I think is very relevant. So there, it starts off like this. If you look at Perek Zayin, Pasuk Zayin and Ches, there he's shown an Anoch. An Anoch means a plumb line, I think it's called. It's what's used to determine if a wall is straight. And again, he's asked, what do you see? And the answer is an Anoch. And that also means the same message as the Kluv Kayetz, which is Lo Oisif Oid Avar Lo, the same exact words you have in Perek Ches Pasuk Beis, you have in Perek Zayin Pasuk Ches. Two images that indicate that Hashem is no longer going to forgive. One is the Kluv Kayetz, and the other one is the Anach. So I suspect, or speculate, I should say, that the Nechois, Nun Chaf Aleph Saf, is supposed to allude to Anach, because as the Rambam points out in the Nevuchim, which is basically very clear in the Nevi'im, that sometimes you have this kind of Nevuah where not only do they see a basket of summer fruit and they're supposed to think Kates, but they could see a word and they're supposed to scramble it. They could see an image, and they're supposed to unscramble those letters to mean something else. So Nechois, perhaps a good Navi would have unscrambled Nechois and said, oh no, Anach. Hashem is going to measure our sins against us. Okay? Now, what supports all this even stronger, and this is how we'll see how it ties into... What?
Right.
This we'll see how it ties into the eating bread. Okay? If you look at the end of Perek Zayin, continue Perek Zayin in Amos. We have, the story goes like this. So Amos comes and says, it's the end is nigh here in Beisel. Amatzia, the kind of Beisel, sends a message to Yeravam. This is not the Yeravam the first, this is Yeravam ben Yoash, king of Yisrael. And the message is that Amos is trying to rebel against you, because Amos is predicting exile. So the message then in Pasuk Yud Beis, the message that this Kain gives to Amos is Asir, go back to Eretz Yehuda and eat bread there and prophesy there. Okay, so he tells the Navi, he tells him, don't do your Nevuah in Beisel, go do your Nevuah in Yehuda and eat bread there. Don't say Nevuah in Beisel, because Beisel is a place which is a Beis Mamlocha. Okay? And he tells him, his answer, the Amos answer is, I'm not a Navi. I'm not the son of a Navi. Rather, Hashem took me and told me Lechinave. So he is a Navi. What does that mean? He's not a Navi or he is a Navi. Okay? That's the story there. Now, notice that, as we said earlier, there's a whole deal about where they're going to eat, where the brothers are going to eat. And they heard that they're going to eat there, which is where? Beis Yosef, in the Beis Mamlacha. So, and that's like significant. Oh, where are they eating? They're eating in Yosef's house. Similar, they're eating lechem, Shisham Yochlu lechem. And here we have the Anach and the Kluv Kayetz and the Kates and the punishment for selling Yosef. And we have this point about not eating bread. The Navi is not supposed to eat bread in Beis El, which is the Beis Mamlacha of Yosef's descendants. Okay, see the parallels? Yeah. Now, right? Okay, very clear. But what does this all mean? So now let's go to Malachim Aleph. Perek Yud Gimel. Malachim Aleph, Perek Yud Gimel. We have something. We have a story that parallels Amos Perek Zayin. Story goes, there's an Ish Elikim, not from Beisel, comes with the Dvar Hashem to Beisel, and has a message for Yeravam. This is the other Yeravam, the first Yeravam. The message is that the Kehanim of the Bam are going to be slaughtered, and this Mizbeach is going to split into two. And that's what happens, and the king's hand shrivels, and then the king asks the Ish Elikim to daven to Hashem and heal his hand, which he does. The king then says to the Ish Elikim, so I'll come to my house and I'll give you a gift. And the Ish Elikim says to the king, I'm not going to eat bread in this place, which is Beisel. And then there's a Navi who convinces him to eat there, right? Everyone knows the story. And he tells him in Pasuk Yud Ches, I'm also a Navi as you are. Okay? Now, he tells him I'm also a Navi as you are, but there's something very interesting with this parak, which is that the man from the Yehuda is not called a Navi, it's called Ish Elikim. And the guy that tricks him, let's say, to eat bread lechem, he says we're both Nevi'im. So now what are the parallels to Amos? Very clear. We have this Navi not from there, who comes in with a message of doom. In this case, in the case of Malach, it was a message of doom, but then the king was impressed with him because he healed his hand. But
the doom was still going to happen.
Right, the doom was still going to happen, but at the same time, the king was impressed with his and wanted to honor him. The Navi says, "No, I won't eat here in Beis El," and he's contending with he's saying a nevuah against the Kaihanim of Beis El, and Amatzia Kohen Beis El says to Amos, "Don't eat here." Basically, you want to eat in Yehuda. We'll explain what that means, and I think what's going on over here. And also here we have in Malachim Aleph Perek Gimel, we have a contrast between the Navi and the Ishalikim, and we have Amos insisting, "I'm not a Navi." Okay. Now, what does he mean he's not a Navi, and what is this whole business of eating bread? So, in the context of Amos, what's he telling him when he says, "Go to Yehuda and eat bread there"? What's he saying? What does that mean? Pashup Pshat. He's sounding like this. He's telling him like this: you want a panosa from being a Navi? This is not the place where the Olam's going to give you a lot of panosa for coming and predicting the downfall of Beis El. You want to make some good money off these prophecies? Go to Yehuda; they'll be very happy. Why are you coming here and selling your goods in Beis El? This is not the place where you're going to get top dollar for it. So go to Yehuda and eat bread there. V'shamti Navi. So what he's suggesting to him, is that he's a Navi, he's a professional Navi who's doing it for the food. And he's telling him, so then you don't belong here. And his response to him, Lo Navi Anochi V'lo ben Navi Anochi, is that
it's not a business.
It's not a business. I'm doing this because Hashem told me to do it. It's not what I am. It's not my it's not my profession. If it is my profession, there's a profession called a Navi, and those include Navi Shekers and Navi Emesis, right? Charlatans, fraudsters, and the real thing. They're all called Navis. And you could have the real Navi, who's also a Navi, meaning to say he made this his profession. One guy does it well, one guy does it not so well. So he's saying, no, this is not my job. This is not my job. I'm actually a Baila Shikman. No, he's like, right?
No, he says, right.
No, he says something with sycamores and sheep, whatever, right? The kids say, you want to know my job? Here's my card. If you ever want good sycamores and sheep, this is not what I'm doing, right? It's not what I'm doing for my panasa. So now, in that light, in Malachim Aleph, where he's told not to eat there, we have to understand it as, don't let the king co-opt you, meaning the king is going to offer you food because the king is impressed with you and he wants you to be his court navi, essentially, like his friend, but you can't be the one who's doing it for the food, because that's to see, remember, in Malachim Perek Gimel, there's a contrast between the navi and the Ishalikim. You're an Ishalikim, you're not a navi, so you're not doing it for the food. And to make that clear, don't take food. So it's something like that. Okay, now let me show you the pasuk in Micha. Going back to Micha, this is why Micha was so important. Micha Perek Gimel, that other place where it says that the Nevi'im will become dark on the Nevi'im. And what's wrong with these false Nevi'im? So look in Micha Perek Gimel, Pasuk, but to remind you, Micha Perek Gimel begins with Shimuna, Rasha Yaakov, and Yosef began by saying Shimuna. And as the Medrash draws this parallel, he's telling them, basically, you guys are not real Nevi'im. I'm the one who has the word of Hashem, because you don't know Mishpat, as Micha Perek Gimel represents to them. And then look at Pasuk Hey. Koyamar Hashem ala Nevi'im hamasim es ami. There are Nevi'im that lead my people astray. Hanoishchem b'shineihem leimor. Hanoishchem b'shineihem. They bite with their teeth. That means they want to rip off food, pull it off with their teeth. V'koru shalom. They'll bite with their teeth and say shalom. V'asher lo yiten al pihem v'kitru lo muchama. So if you give them a piece of a bite, then they'll give you the word shalom. If not, they'll declare war against you. So these are false Nevi'im. Now let's explain a little what this means. The main message of the Navi, as we've seen at length, is Shalom. And this is why in the beginning of Parashat Vayeshev we have Lo Yachlu Dabra the Shalom and the other Shamar as Havdavar, because the whole debate between Yosef and the Shvatim is whether we're going to look for the Dvar Hashem or we're going to do Chalomis. The Dvar Hashem is Shalom. So Lo Yachlu Dabra the Shalom the problem with the davar was that they couldn't access shalom. Now, what does it mean that the Dvar Hashem shalom means something very, very simple? Shalom is like Hashem calling to us. It's a greeting to us. If we can hear Him calling to us, what that means is we can figure out how to live together with Him, and everything else follows from that. Okay, shalom is cooperation between us and Hashem, and the Navi and therefore cooperation among ourselves as well. So the Navi who can talk shalom is the Navi. He's the one who has the Dvar Hashem. Now these Nevi'im only offer shalom, which is the word of the Navi, the ikar word of the Navi, vidach pirusha, to the one that gives them a bite. And as soon as someone doesn't feed them, they declare war against them. And this is a reference to, and therefore what's going to happen? Next pasuk says the day's going. The night is going to fall on the Nevi'im in the middle of the day, and they're going to lose their nevuah. And this is a reference to the brothers who couldn't speak shalom to Yosef because he was threatening their food supply, right? Asher lo yitin al pihem v'kitru alav milchama. So, because Yosef is threatening their parnasa, their food, by having dreams about him taking control of the grain, and also by, as we said, because he's mixing teven with bar, which means alludes to the fact that we're going to go to Mitzrayim, but it's going to end up being pretty shver, because we're going to have teven as well. Okay. Point is that he's trying to wrest control and do something against the brothers regarding grain. Therefore, they don't want to eat with him, or they feel like they can't eat with him, and therefore they declare war against him, and they lose their nevuah. By Yisrael and by Yeru, all they see is Nechais Tzvi. They don't understand Anoch, they don't understand Barkit. Okay, so fine. So now going back to Vayeshev, going back to Miketz, I'm sorry. What happens in Miketz? Here, Sham Yochlu Lechem, right? So we have this whole theme. Where does the person belong eating? So Amos is told, you don't eat here. If you want to eat there. The Ish Elokim is told not to eat in Beis El. And here's where I'm not sure how it all comes together, but I want to just show you the scheme, because that much is very clear. In Parshas Miketz, they find out Sham Yochlu Lechem in the Beis Mamlacha with Yosef, the one who they didn't eat with L'chatchila and they felt was threatening their bread. Now all of a sudden they're eating with him in Beis El, or in the Beis Mamlacha, right? Which is Yosef's. Beis El is Yosef, associated with Yosef. And what happens? What happens is Shalom. Because if you look at Pasuk Chav Zayin, after they bring in the mincha and they bow, Vayishal lahem l'shalom, Vayomer ha-shalom, Vayomeru shalom l'abdech avinu. And as the rule is, when the pasuk is repeating something like that, okay, it wants us to say, okay, that's the significant thing here, is that they achieved shalom. And achieving shalom is what we've always been looking for since the beginning of the story, which means in the Emek that there was no nevuah, there was no Dvar Hashem in this family because of the fight because of the strife. So there was no fight, the davar wasn't there manifest, and they couldn't be shown. Here, they're eating together. So the fact that they're eating together, this is a tremendous milestone. Originally, they ate separate from Yosef. Yosef was in the pit, and they sat down to eat bread. And that's when they didn't have shalom, and they didn't have nevuah. Here, they're eating sham yochlu lechem, they're eating there in Yosef's territory. And they're going to have shalom. So now, what does this all mean to begin together with the themes from Yosef and from Amos and Micha? I think what it means is like this. But here's where I'm not sure how it comes together. Oh, just one more point. What does it say in Amos? It says that the sun is going to set Batzaharayim. So I maintain that's the remez over here to this pasuk where it says they came to Yosef's house. They prepared the mincha before Yosef will come Batzaharayim. Because the point is, it was a state of illumination. It wasn't dark, which in the mashal means, the nimshal of that is, that they did not lose their nevuah now. In other words, Yaakov is training them how to retrieve the lost nevuah. So the Dvar Hashem that left his family for the last whatever years, and now is going to be reclaimed when they're united, and when Yaakov comes down to Mitzrayim and Vatachi Ruach Yaakov Aviyam Ushras Ruach Nevuah, as Targum says, right? So here Yosef is training them, Yaakov is training them how to achieve that. Now, how is that indeed? How to achieve it? So the way it seems is the following, based on the wisdom of the Makars that we discussed thus far. The brothers, although they want to be Nevi'im who declare Shalom, they'll only do that for someone who gives them bread. And that's why they lost their Nevuah originally, because they didn't share bread with Yosef, and therefore they couldn't have Nevuah, as Amos says. The way they're going to retrieve the Nevuah is once they do eat bread together with Yosef. They're going to eat bread together with Yosef. So in other words, why does the Navi, let's say, not say Nevuah and Beisel, or not eat bread and Beisel? Because he's not on the payroll. In other words, he's not doing Nevuah for bread. The Shvatim were doing Nevuah.
And he's not at peace with them either.
Right, exactly. The Shvatim, who their problem was that they were doing Nevuah for bread, and they were thrown off from their ability to Misnabi because of their dependence on bread, and because he was threatening their bread. The solution is, okay, you know what? Actually, you're going to go there. You're going to eat bread with him. He's going to be, you're going to be there in his base mamlacha, right there on the enemy territory, eating bread, and that's going to make you realize that you are on the same page as him, one way or the other, and that's going to be the shalom, and then the Dvar of Hashem is going to return. So what I'm saying is, let me just say what I'm saying, and then I'll say the problem, just to make it clear what the problem is a little bit. The bringing the mincha, which is the same exact ingredients that they saw earlier, plus, as you pointed out, food items. It's very significant now, you see. But we'll get to that. We'll have to understand and talk what that's about. But the bringing of the mincha is saying, look, you know what happened when you lost? Well, the first time you had nechos tzivah is that you lost the nevuah, and now you're gonna get back the nevuah by the means of the rapprochement that's going to happen around this mincha in a certain place, doing a certain thing at a certain time in the house of Yosef, eating bread, batzaharayim, right? So it's in his territory. You're at peace with him. You're not. Your word is not going to be like the word of the Navi at Beisel. That Beisel has to be destroyed. On the contrary, you're going to be supportive of him. You're going to eat bread. Therefore, you're going to eat bread with him, and that's not going to be a threat to your davar. And it's going to be batzaharayim as opposed to what happened before, which is that the sun set midday, so to speak, figuratively.
You didn't tell them to eat. You tell them just to bring these things.
Right. But as you pointed out, the button and shkedim, what are you going to do with button and shkedim? It's not for eating. And Davash. Oh, Davash. No, Davash is very significant because, well, I'll get to that in a second. Why Davash? Okay, let me just say this now. Davash fits right in because Hasam givulech shalom chilev chitim yasbiech, right? With shalom comes chilev chita, and by chilev chita mitzvah Davash yasbiech. But these are the two mizmarim that we've been showing goes all over these parashas. So chilev chita and davash. So he's saying, look, you can have chilev chita, you can have davash, you can have shalom, which is Bnei Yerushalayim Hashem Nidchei Yisrael Lechanis. When everyone's back together, then you can have shalom. Then you can have the real.
So Mitzrayim
doesn't you can have the real good food.
He doesn't say Mitzrayim doesn't have davash. Take it with you.
Right.
And they have the chilev chita. They can
so that's the thing. I don't know. They have chita. I don't know if they have chilev chita.
They'll make it chilev chita.
Made of chalav and davash. Not chilev chalav. Okay, that goes together.
That's
yeah. Basically, okay. There's something in Yechezkel. Take a look. And then he mentioned that. Look at Yechezkel Perek Chav Zayin. Talks about the exports from Eretz Yisrael and Eretz Yehuda. Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Yud Zayin. Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Zayin Yechezkel, and from Yehuda and Yisrael comes Chite Minis, Fanag, Davash, Shemen, and Sri. Now, I don't know what chitim minis are, but if that's some sort of special kind of chitim, we know that chitim is part of the shus aminim. Yeah. In this case, Yaakov is not sending chitim because it's a hunger, so he's sending stuff that you could sort of send a little bit of it, ma'atavash, right? And it's like a spread, also. It's a delicacy. What?
Dash and shemen also.
Yes.
What's the shus aminim?
Yes, depending on what Davash means. If Davash means Davash tomorrow. Yeah.
It's okay. Davash.
What?
It's the end of Davash.
Yeah, of course. And it's always called Davash. Of course, Davash is very associated. So, yeah, of course. So, okay, we have to figure that out, right? If he's doing something edible over here. But the point I was saying was that the Chilev Chitim Yazbiech goes along with Gevulech Shalom, which goes along with Nidchei Yisrael Lechanis. So now that they're having this reunion with Yosef, and they're going to eat together. So now they're going to enjoy it. Now they can have some dvash because okay. So why am I saying this? There's a little bit of a problem. There's a little bit of a red herring. I mean, a little bit of something that's a little bit confusing to me. Which is number one. So what? The Shvatim retrieved their nevuah. Really, to say nevuah for food is a negative thing. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, the Shvatim did that. Okay, that's true. That's what Micha says. No, that's what Micha says. What? No, whatever. They were influenced by
that point. Okay.
They were influenced by the fact that they were not going to give them bread, right? And therefore they couldn't say shalom to him. That's what Micha says. Okay, fine. So, but the problem, that's okay. That's all true. That's all very clear. What's interesting and strange to me is that the solution should be that Yosef should give them food. I mean, so in other words, it's accepting that they're still influenced by the food, but guess what? Yosef giving food. Okay, I mean, they do have a problem, so maybe he's working with their problem. That's fine. I don't know if I have a problem with that. That's one of them.
Now they're coming to buy it.
So I know, but they're eating with him, and he's giving them gifts, right?
But he gives them
for free. By the way, right, exactly. And also remember when the king in Malachim, Perek Gimel, he offered to give the gifts to the Navi, similar to over here. We've got Yisam Masas Meispanov. He's the king, and he's going to make these guys rich, or he's going to at least pamper them at that point. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is we have another strange thing in Amais, in that same Perek, in the end of Perek Ches, which is that the Rav is actually Rav L'Dvar Hashem, Lo Rav L'Lechem. And in that mashal, eating bread is a mashal for the Dvar Hashem. So on the one hand, so we have to figure out what's going on here. In Perek Zayin of Amos, it says that the Navi, I'm here to tell you the Dvar Hashem. I'm not here to eat bread. And in Perek Chesed Amos, it says eating bread is actually a mashal for the Dvar Hashem, right? Or So, and because the Rav Dvar Hashem and the Rav Lechem go together. So, and in our story,
that's why he doesn't need that Lechem.
Why?
He has Dvar Hashem.
Okay, so he doesn't need it.
No, he's not here for that. I have that already. I have Dvar Hashem.
You mean because no one cares about Lechem? Because really we don't care about Lechem. Lo Rav Lechem, whether we care about Dvar Hashem, like that's what's really important. Yeah, maybe that's
and
it.
Also,
right.
As you said,
if you
Shalom, because the Navi says Shalom, because he has Shalom not only among us but with Hashem.
Right.
He knows what to do. He knows the derech. So he
doesn't need your bread.
Worry about it.
Right, he doesn't need your bread. Right. In other words, you're saying that in as much. Okay, so you're saying Perek Zayin and Perek Ches do go together because in as much as a Rav L'Lechem is a mashal for Rav Dvar Hashem, and the reason for that is because if you have the Dvar Hashem, you have Lechem. So therefore, the Navi doesn't have to sell the Dvar Hashem for Lechem because on the contrary, he's the one who generates the Lechem. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. Right. Okay, good. So, but I'm trying to understand now is then something strange over here with the brothers, which is that so instead of them finding the Dvar Hashem that generates the Lechem. Right, so in other words, that suggests then that the solution to people who sell out the Dvar Hashem for Lechem is not to taka get Lechem from their enemy, it's rather to learn that they shouldn't sell out. Mm-hmm. Right, so I'm just saying it bothers, there's that other aspect in this whole parallels that the Nevi'im who are not supposed, let's say the Navi's not supposed to eat in Beisel, right? Yeah. So it's not like no one ever told no eat there because you'll make shalom with them. No, Taka don't eat there because you don't need to eat there. You have the Dvar Hashem, whatever. Now here the Shvatim are not doing that. They're eating in Beisel. Okay, maybe the Mahala for now is
so that's the
right.
Make
right. The Mahala for now is like this. The Shvatim are Nevi'im Hamasim, as Micha says. They're not like almost it says Lo Navi Anochi. They are like the Nevi'im who can be influenced by the lack of bread. That's what happened in the beginning of Yeshiv. Again, no question about that. The chiddush is that they remained that way, at least at this point, and Yaakov is telling them, good, you know what? Because of that, you couldn't understand the Chayes Tzivah like the first time. Let's redo it, and this time you'll understand, because this time you will eat Lechem together with Yosef, the one who you mistreated because he didn't give you Lechem. Now he's going to give you Lechem. The Sham Yoichu Lechem, then it's going to be Mitzrayim. Okay, we could, for now, leave it at that. We'll see how things get clear. Okay, Shkoyach.